Hey y'all, it's Poseidon. In this video I'm going to be going over the most accurate tier list made for Mortal Kombat 1 yet. No, I did not make this tier list. This isn't something that I created. This is something that was made by the community, mainly pioneered by Cease MH. Now, if you don't know who Cease is, he was a amazing Garrus player back in MK11, won multiple online tournaments, then in MK1. He was actually a top 50 player for 2023. Has taken a little bit of a step away from the game, at least playing competitively, but he's a very analytical player, and he's very just analytical about the game in general. He's very non-biased when it comes to a lot of his opinions, so I think he was the best person, or one of the best people that could have pioneered a tier list like this. And this isn't all his opinion. This is actually basically none of his opinion. And what he did was he created a tier list and got each character who a player who plays this character at a high level competitively. A lot of these players are ranked in the top 100, and he got them to essentially make a matchup chart based off their character. And what's cool about that is that not only do you get the matchup chart from the character's perspective, so for example, Cosner made the Reptile matchup chart. Not only do you get his opinion on how Reptile goes against all the characters, but then you get how all the other characters fight against Reptile. So you get the opinion going both ways. And when it comes to most people's tier lists, a lot of people don't play all the characters in the game, and if they do, they don't play it at an incredibly high level. So this has each character played it at an incredibly high level and has the matchup going both ways, and then it's created essentially into a tier list. You may not necessarily agree with this, but this is essentially based strictly off matchups. And I'm going to go into first how this tier list was made, and then I'm going to come back, revisit it, and then give some of my own personal opinion and see, what I think about it. So this is it. So essentially what he did was he found a person who played each matchup, or not each matchup, a player who played the character, each character essentially, and then he had them make essentially a matchup chart, as you see here with Splash did. Make a matchup chart and then explain, okay, this matchup is winning, this matchup is even, this matchup is losing. And then they would bring it up, and then it would essentially be debated, as you can see here. Joystick's like, oh, how do you think Lao beats Liu? Fletch explains it, and then they essentially go to a debate. And essentially, the whole thing about this is to try to come to a consensus about how the matchup actually is. And obviously, at some point, they're going to come to a standstill. Someone's going to think someone wins, someone's going to think someone loses, or this matchup's even, but someone thinks that the character wins the matchup. So essentially, he talks about that and how it would eventually be a civil debate, and if it came to a really prolonged period and they just couldn't come to a decision, he would use a coin toss just to essentially get a matchup on there. And even if he says this is incredibly rare, and I bet it was, so it's understandable that eventually that would happen, and it's just you got to get a number on there so you could essentially go on with this. So eventually that's what he did. They would debate, and if they couldn't come to a resolution, which almost never happened, they would do a coin toss, and that was, like you said, that was very rare, and I bet it was. And then this essentially is the final, what they came to a resolution on. If the matchup was 6-4 in favor, 5-5, 7-3 in each direction, essentially. So if you want to take a look at this is essentially what the mains of each character came up with, and contrasted with the opinion of the other character playing that matchup, if that makes sense. And essentially that came, and then eventually it needed to be organized. So how are you going to organize this? So what he did was essentially came up with a essentially mathematical way of going about it. Each character started with 100 points, and based off of how, if the character was even, won, or lost a matchup, they would gain or lose points depending on the severity of that. So if they lost a matchup 7-3, they would lose points significantly. If they won a matchup 7-3, they would gain it, and so on and so forth. Essentially, this is where he talks about that, where if a matchup is 1-9, which I don't think there's a 1-9 matchup in this, they would lose 16 points. And like I said, remember, every character started with 100. So if a matchup was 5-5, it would just be even. If a matchup was 6-4, then it would go up a certain amount of points. If a matchup was 4-6, losing, then they would go down a certain amount of points. Essentially, I'm not sure if you saw the tier list. I'll go back and revisit it in a second, but then you'll see the number that was next to the thing that kind of determined. So basically, the higher the points, the higher you won the tier list, the lower the points, the lower you won, and then it was essentially just organizing it from there. I hope this makes sense. It can be a little complicated, but Cease is a very smart person, and this makes a lot of sense, and I think this is the best way to go about it when you're making a community-based tier list like this. And essentially, that is it. You can see the players' names right here of who, essentially did each character. As you can see, all these players are amazing players. Matrix, top 100 player, Just top 100, Faisal, Dialogue. All these players are basically were ranked in the top 100 by yours truly, except for Natara. Unfortunately, Isaiah, insanely good Natara player, probably in the top 100, but just didn't have enough tournament results. Not tournament results like in terms of quality, but just didn't play in enough events to get on it, essentially. So that's the way it goes. And yep, there it is. You can see all that. And so we're going to go back and we're going to revisit the tier list that I came up with. And this might be a little contrary to what people think, but I think going based off matchups is the best way to do it, because in a vacuum, a character might seem really good. And something I like to point to is in MK11, I felt like if you looked at just the character's toolkit, I thought that Joker was the best character in the game. The problem is that his counterplay, which was basically keeping him away, zoning, and backdashing, was so easy that there were a lot of characters that could do it, that could keep up with him and could just keep Joker out, to the point where he was probably top 10, probably at best top 5 towards the end of the game's meta. But if you look at just his kit, he was probably the best. So it's interesting to look at where we think of like characters and like, oh wow, they have so many tools. So someone like Kenshi, who actually has fallen in the middle of this, where you think, oh, he just needs to pop Sento, and then he's the best character in the game. Well, there's a lot of characters that can counter that, and there's a lot of characters that can really prevent him from getting in. And even if he gets Sento out, he still needs to close the distance. For example, a character like Scorpion, who may not be that good in the game overall, but can really keep Kenshi out, and probably beats Kenshi outright. So it's interesting to think about, and that's something that you want to consider when when you personally make a tier list, but this is something that was considered here. So I'm going to go over it. So we got bottom. I think people almost universally agree Havoc is the worst character in the game. It just doesn't really have anything too much. His damage is all right. His zoning is all right. A lot of flaws. A lot of basically glitchy behavior. It makes sense. And then so the bottom two after that is Rain and Reptile. This also makes sense as a Reptile main. And I'm not sure if you saw the chart, but basically Reptile has basically no winning matchups. He either goes even or loses to the entire cast. I don't think any matchups are too severe to the point where it's like, oh, that's like a 7-3 matchup. But he doesn't really win. He doesn't have the tools, at least at this point. Next week we're getting some buffs. Let's go. But he doesn't really have the tools at this point that we can say, oh, he beats this character, you know what I mean? And it's a little bit the same thing with Rain. Rain also just hasn't been announced to get buffs. Maybe he will. But they play similar game plans where Reptile is like, he can make a read to get in. It's kind of easy to keep him out. You can make a read to get in. Force Ball doesn't go full screen, so you gotta either use your dash or your slide, and it's risky. It's a risky way to get in. Either way, it's punishable in any capacity, whether it whiffs, whether you block either move. You're likely to get punished, and so you have to make a read to get in, and then once you get in, you gotta keep up the pressure. A lot of his staggers are very minus. And then Rain just his zoning is good, but it's slow. If you have a really far advancing armor move, you can pretty much just kind of react and just get in on Rain. And then when Rain gets in, he has mix, but it's not really that safe. And if he does it and you block it, then you're just kind of out of his pressure. He has those setups, but even delay wake up, if he does the pool setup with Luke Sub-Zero or whatever, you just delay wake up. And a lot of times you can just block the overhead and you're out of the pressure. Going up to the next list, we have Natara and Smoke. This one also kind of makes sense. Smoke, a lot of gaps, some flaws. He goes invisible. That's kind of his win condition. It's not that hard to get that as long as you have a bar meter. But he's a very neutral-based character. He's one of those characters I feel like you're only as good as you are as a player. So he can seem really good, but he can also seem really bad. Natara, kind of in a similar boat. Very high execution, crazy damage, but 900 health. Just not the greatest neutral tools. Can sometimes hang yourself. In terms of just being really negative. So this kind of also makes sense, and I can see like Nahara's definitely one of those characters that she's just so goofy that there's probably some matchups that she does win, just because she can stay in the air and just her ability to stay airborne, it can kind of just throw some characters off. But she's unfortunately isn't a great character. And then 900 health really comes back to bite her. The next one we have Garrus Lee May Scorpion. Scorpion, definitely one of those characters that he plays such a good keep away game that I feel like he can't be the worst character in the game. But if you look at just his raw kit and stuff like that, it's like I can see how you can make a debate for him being the worst. It's just that he plays such a good keep away game. He has range, he does damage that like with Chameleon he could be pretty strong. Lee May in a similar boat where she just pukes damage. She isn't a great character, but like if you get one armor read, or like example, if you're playing Reptile and you shoot a force ball and she armors through it, you're eating 50. And so basically you can't force ball in that matchup. So she has some like matchups where I imagine it should be really good. Garrus, but he's just slow. He really needs to get his game going. If he has a character that can kind of threaten him from full screen, he kind of is a little lost. He becomes a super character when he gets all his his I don't know how to say, his sand hourglasses going, stuff. When he gets those setups going, he can be pretty strong, but he really needs to get those going. Any character that can find them kind of makes it a hard time. Okay, the next one we have Katana sub Shang, Xiao, and Kenshi. Kenshi being this low, I feel like it's surprising to a lot of people. And like I said, the thing with Kenshi is that like when you look at matchup by matchup, I can see how he'd be this low. The thing is that his win condition is just Pop Sento, and in theory, I can see how he would be lower. And why some people say, oh, Loshi, or he's bad, or he's not good. But it's just that, like, when you're in the middle of a match, especially when you're in tournament, and it's intense, and you're trying to win, you're trying to open up your opponent, when you can just pop Sento, and then you get safe launching 50-50s that you get to keep your turn after. And your opponent has to essentially make a read to get out, or just guess right time after time again. It's a bit difficult. It's difficult to fight against 100%. Katana, strong character, strong neutral, big buttons, good damage, but not many Katanas playing her, and I can see how she would be that great. I feel like if they had more people playing her, her game could be a little boring, so I can understand why not. Kind of suffers a little bit like how Jigglypuff does in Super Smash Bros. Melee. Good character, but just not a lot of people playing her because she's not the most fun. So maybe it would be better if there's more people playing her, but yeah, is what it is. Sub-Zero with Chameleon's kind of insane. He kind of went from being universally considered like the worst character in the game to being like mid-tier. And he just with Chameleon, he's just so good. Like, get basically like double 50-50s. The mix is insane. You get combos basically off everything. It's just a little. He became pretty good, especially with Chameleon. Shang, interesting character. I honestly don't know too much about Shang, but I can see why he's here. Just, middle of the pack. Xiao, crazy without X. With X, the range is pretty good. No real mids though. Some characters can really just shut him down. Can really not well and keep his pressure going. He kind of has to mash in some situations just to keep his pressure going. Is what it is. All right, I'm not gonna. I've gone through each character individually, and I don't want to do that because it's probably just going to be super annoying and tedious. But the next one, I guess, any character that surprises me, maybe Quan. Quan with the buffs, I think it's just he went from potentially the worst character in the game to the upper half, in my opinion. I think he's really strong. I think he's only going to look better. He has synergy with every cameo in the game. Serena, insane synergy. Cyrax, insane synergy. Sector, insane synergy. Frost, insane synergy. Sub-Zero, insane synergy. It's like Kung Lao, very good synergy. Just every other character kind of makes sense. Lao is safe armor move, just what else you gotta say? Safe armor move, big damage, good zoning. And then the next one, I'll kind of say Tanya is a character that is probably the one that people think is the highest here. And if you just look at matchup by matchup, if you use Tanya Goro, just having that disjointed mid, it's quick. She gets corner combos, meterless. She gets safe armor moves. She gets, a really good zoning option. She's just a really strong character, and I can see if you look at a matchup by matchup how she would be strong. She probably has minimal or no losing matchups with some strong, really good, probably winning matchups. So there it is. And then top one, I've thought he was top one pretty much since week one. He's an incredibly strong character, Peacemaker. I don't know what matchup he struggles with. anti-zoning is absurd. Zoning is really good. Damage is absurd. Synergy with a few cameos is crazy, including Cyrax being able to combo into net in multiple ways. He's just a really strong character, and I agree that he's probably top 1. But there you have it. Shout out to Cease. I'm going to leave his information, his Twitter, in the description. I know he does upload to YouTube. He hasn't uploaded, from what I know, in a very long time, but I'll make sure to leave both a link to his YouTube and the Twitter in the description. Show this man some love. He put in a ton of work, and just shout out to the community in general. I'll leave also a link to the exact tweet that he put this, so you can go view it yourself, so you don't have to go searching and find it. Make sure to go scroll down and you see the people who each individual character who kind of made the matchup chart for each individual character. Make sure to drop them some follows too, because those are some of, if not the best players in the scene. Basically all top 100 level players. Absolutely insane talent. So definitely make sure to show them some love. I hope you guys enjoy this, because this is really cool. Probably the most accurate tier list, and it's not just the opinion of one person kind of for like clicks and stuff. This is a really thought out mathematical way of going about and considering how good each character is at the game. So it's really cool, and I hope you guys enjoy this, because this is really the best way to go about making something like this, and it's the best way that the scene could go about it. And I think just, tier lists and stuff tend to be kind of silly, but this one was really good. And I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next video.